of Worship, your source for commentary and discussion on worship, theology, and culture. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Act of Worship podcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones, and this will likely be, in fact, I am going to go ahead and say with certainty that this will be the last podcast of the 2019 year. And so I will start back sometime in 2020 whenever I feel like it. And so no rush, no pressure, but at some point we will have some more podcasts. But this will be the final one of the 2019 year. And today is a sort of theological, cultural, and liturgical topic. And to start it off today, I want to ask a question. And this is under the assumption that many people listening know and understand the various theories of how some of the liturgical and Christian celebrations came to be, including Christmas and why Christmas is celebrated on December 25th. And so my question is this: is Christmas derived from secular observances? And if so, should we celebrate it? So we are approaching the Christmastide season, and it's common to hear arguments on various sides for or against the celebration of Christmas, including those related to the actual date of Christmas itself. Many of our American traditions have little to do with the birth of Christ, really, such as Christmas trees, the exaggeration of St. Nicholas that we find in Santa Claus, and even the giving of material gifts. Some of these may or may not have been derived from actual biblical practices, and so I want to get into this. I believe that these external elements that we see commonly at Christmas trees, the lights, the reindeer, the stories, Frosty the Snowman, all of that. I believe that these external elements are not wrong or right in and of themselves, but we have to be careful, and likely we have lost the sense of Christmastide in American culture. And I also believe that a large reason for that is the negation of the Advent season. Bypassing Advent really only contributes to the materialistic attitudes that we possess as a society. And so those opposed to religion often claim that Christmas, and really other Christian observances for that same matter, is derived from pagan rituals alone, and even fall in the way of atheists who claim that this is a sufficient reason to abandon the celebration. In other words, because Christmas or because Easter or you name it is derived from, let's say, the solar lunar calendar rather than Christian practices, maybe even pagan practices, because it's derived from that, we should forego celebrating Christmas or Easter or whatever it may be. One such argument suggests even the timing of December 25th to be evidence that Christians celebrate falsely. And these same arguments are made against all Christian celebrations. And so this should cause us really as Christians not to just react, but to take a proactive stance and figure out, why do we do these things? If that's really the case, why is it December 25th? And we need to consider the foundational reasons for observances. And so here I'm going to argue for the celebration of Christmas as a vital celebration and a vital observance in the Christian life. And I'm going to conclude by extending the philosophy to all Christian observances, including Easter. These liturgical observations, these liturgical rituals that we practice, and maybe even some that if you didn't grow up in a liturgical context, if you grew up in a free church, some that you're not familiar with. For example, Pentecost Sunday. That is one that has been observed by the church for centuries. So I'm going to argue the foundational reasons for why we celebrate these things, and I'm going to focus really on Christmas and December 25th. So, beginning with why December 25th. So I'm going to begin with one of the primary arguments against Christmas, the date itself. The first recorded date of Christmas being celebrated is celebrated December 25th. In fact, is 336 A.D. And many of you are familiar with this. This is under the Emperor Constantine. He was the first Roman Christian emperor. But it was not an official Roman state festival, even at that time. But unfortunately, biased human secularism clings to this idea and furthers the claim to submit that Christmas is derived from pagan rituals rather than the literal birth of God himself. And it has only been perpetuated because of Constantine's decree. And so the obvious bias of this is evident in the suggestion. But there are multiple theories on how and why December 25th was chosen. So there's not just one. People that grab hold of one idea and say that this is why Christmas is celebrated December 25th need to realize that there are other theories, and it should be noted that these are nothing more than theories. They cannot be proven. One theory suggests that so many pagan festivals occurred around this date, so it was natural to include the Christian celebration of Christ's birth. For example, the birthday of the pagan sun god Mithra was celebrated December 25th when Romans thought the winter solstice occurred. Now, we know now that that is different. It is not always on December 25th. And so another theory suggests that December 25th was chosen to connect the Christian celebration of Christ's birth to the Jewish parallel of Hanukkah, which begins on the 25th of Kislev, the Jewish month closest to the solar lunar month of December. And so there are a couple of theories right there. And I'll be honest, there are parallels between Christianity and Judaism, and so we can't negate that idea. In fact, you look at Easter, and I think this is not coincidental that there are parallels between Christianity and Judaism. In fact, I think there is a sovereign plan of God in that, since Jesus was a Jew and he first came to the Jewish people. Since Jesus was a Jew, this is a feasible reason that December 25th was chosen for this date. Another likely reason is that ancient Jews believed that prophets died around the same time of year as their conception. So follow me here. Jesus was crucified and died on the 15th day of Nisan. And so in the solar lunar calendar, that would be in the spring around March 25th. So, okay, that's not an exact date. Now, realistically, there are a few ideas as to the exact year Jesus died. Again, uncertain. Nobody knows for sure. But you could trace down the exact date of that year. And really, it would fall around March 25th. And so March 25th is regarded as Annunciation Day in the Christian calendar. The day that Mary received news from God that she was going to carry and deliver Jesus. Hence, 9 months later, December 25th is when we celebrate his birth. And so these are just a few theories, and probably the most important theories which exist regarding the chosen date of December 25th. And let me point out, too, that there are some parallels between the Jewish calendar and even solar lunar occurrences. For example, so Annunciation Day is March 25th, 9 months later, December 25th. Jesus did die and was crucified the 15th day of Nisan. Now, this is around Passover. In fact, the Last Supper in the upper room was likely a Seder meal, beginning Passover. And so Jesus crucified on the 15th day of Nisan, around March 25th. One reason that we don't observe the Jewish calendar, but we observe the solar lunar calendar, is likely because it is more pragmatic. That is what society follows. That is what culture follows. And so Easter, if you're wondering why Easter is a different day every year, it's because it has to do with the moon and its cycles. And so Easter is always going to be the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So whenever you have the spring equinox, the next full moon, it's the Sunday after that. That will always be Easter, and that is why it is a different day every year. Now, Christmas is not the same way. Christmas is always going to be December 25th. But Easter is, for us in the Christian calendar, that day. And I'm not saying that is right or wrong, that it revolves around the moon's cycle. So here's the deal. Particularly regarding Christmas, no one truly knows when or why. So bear in mind that these are only theories, and there are more theories. These mentioned, I believe, are the most presented and the most substantial, but none of them can be proven or falsified. So whether any or none of them are true, Christians have celebrated the birth of Christ on December 25th for centuries, albeit in a vastly different way than today, particularly in Western society. So while multiple sides argue the rightness or wrongness of December 25th, it is the chosen day that Christians have chosen for centuries to celebrate the birth of Christ. And so no one knows with absolute certainty when Jesus was born or how, or really, nobody knows even the exact location in Bethlehem. There are ideas. And so, yeah, December 25th might not be the exact day that Christ was born, but it is the day that Christians have chosen for centuries to honor his birth. Now, I've heard many people say, well, Jesus was probably born in the summer, actually. That is bogus. He may have been, but honestly, it's highly unlikely that he was born during the summer. What that is, when you're hearing that, you're hearing people from churches that heard some preacher make a cute comment saying, well, I think Jesus was probably born in the summer because he probably heard third-hand information from a scholar somewhere. And so there might be a little evidence, but highly unlikely. When you hear stuff like that, be very skeptical, particularly when it's coming from people who have never looked into it, never studied it. So no one knows with absolute certainty when Jesus was born, the day that he was born. In fact, I'll tell you this much, no one knows with certainty that Jesus was crucified when he was 33 years old, as a lot of people just assume he was 33. He was about 33, and he probably was, but nobody knows for sure. Nonetheless, December 25th is the date that the church has held for centuries to celebrate the birth of Christ. Whether it was derived from pagan practices, at least the timing of it, the celebration of the birth of Christ certainly was not derived from pagan practices. Maybe the timing was, maybe it was not. Whether it was or not, it is the chosen date that the church observes the birth of Christ. And so, is it right or wrong to observe Christmas if it is derived from pagan practices? All Christian Orthodox observances are crucial to living in the reality of the story of God. Okay, so I'll go that far as even saying Pentecost Sunday and Ascension Sunday, Trinity Sunday. When you have observations, Epiphany, or any of these liturgical celebrations, observances that the church has observed for centuries, these are vital to living in the reality of the story of God. So I've focused on the date of December 25th here, but numerous arguments are made against observing Christian celebrations, not limited to Christmas, but also including Easter and others. So whether the date of December 25th or any other element surrounding the Christmas season and other liturgical feasts is derived from pagan practices, it's negated by the fact that Christians have chosen to honor specific events in the life of Christ for centuries. Even if December 25th, for example, stems from pagan customs, it's now, and has been for centuries, a Christian observance. So it is no longer pagan and really never was. Perhaps the date came from that, but really it is a Christian observance. Rarely do you hear somebody mention December 25th and think of anything pagan. What they think of is the birth of Christ. So we should not be concerned as much with the origins. So to answer the question of whether Christians should observe Christmas if it's derived from pagan practices, I suggest that it's right to do so because the observance is not pagan. So I might also add that it's likely never been pagan. As I mentioned, it's always been about celebrating the birth of Christ, no matter where the date came from. And December 25th likely was chosen for pragmatic purposes only. So what makes the day sacred is not the day itself, but the content. And so as December 25th approaches, and keep in mind, Christmastide is a season. It is not one day. It is December 25th through January 5th. It runs 12 days, and then you have Epiphany starting on January 6th. And so as December 25th approaches, Christmastide approaches, let us remember the miraculous and the glorious birth of God, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, and he came to bring life to his people. And so it's a sacred day and one that is right to celebrate. So let's celebrate the birth of Christ beginning December 25th. Thank you for listening today to the Act of Worship podcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Michael Jones.